Okay, so again, David, recovered addict, and we are on page 73, very bottom line, the beginning of the one, two, three, fourth paragraph. I've got that right, David. Yeah.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Do you, anything you want to recap?
No, I think we're good. I think we covered it really well. As you guys know, if you were here last week, Howard, spectacular like always. And I think we're jumping into a little bit of a different path now. We're gonna be really diving into the fifth step here. So I think this sentence we're gonna be setting up here separates it a little bit. So I don't think I should go backwards. I think we should go forwards.
Okay. Yeah, and thanks to Howard E for jumping in, and
Mhm.
Paige F who sat in a bunch of times recently. It's so good to have strong big book friends in recovery that can come in and pinch hit and do amazing. Hit home runs when they're pinch hitting.
Mhm.
All right, bottom of 73. Here we go. We must be entirely honest with somebody if we wish, excuse me, if we expect to live long or happily in this world. Rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose this person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. Those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession must, and of course, will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with someone ordained by an established religion. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics.
I do have denomination, which is a group of individuals called by the same name, especially one of large religious bodies.
Thanks, Abby. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Abby. So back to where David started at the bottom of 73 in that fourth paragraph. Okay, we Bill throws in the word must. So we've been counting, and as we go forward in the book, we'll cheat a little bit. I'll tell you there's 139 of them thus far. As far as I can tell, are meanings that look like must. But this one here, we must be entirely honest with somebody. Not everybody, but somebody. And what I mean by that is going to meetings and dumping my stuff and just like thinking that sharing is going to be good enough, and then just going home and then kicking the cat. And I would never do that, of course, but I'm just saying I can't just like I don't go to meetings to dump my stuff. I as a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. Oh, by the way, I didn't introduce myself. I'm David. I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. But as a recovered addict, I try to bring something to meetings. So I'm not there regurgitating my daily events in my life necessarily. On to the next page. I think this is a little bit of a death threat. And it's also this sentence here says, we must be entirely honest with somebody if we expect to live long or happily in this world. I think that's a good description of what it looks like on my insides. I'm dying inside. I am internally dying inside. And if I'm going to live long, and be happy in this world, I've got to do this fifth step. I think that's a death threat. I think it's going to tell me that I'm going to die from this disease one way or another. I'm already dying inside. If I want, again, this disease I have is an internal disease with an internal solution. Then it says, rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose person, or yes, it does. It says persons, plural. And if anyone's ever listened to Joe Hawk, he talks about doing a fifth step
Mm,
with five different people
yeah.
with different amounts of sobriety. Someone with 6 months, someone with 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, whatever. It doesn't matter. Getting different perspectives of his fourth column, even looking at his third column. I mean, he says, don't turn a blind eye to that. Give it a shot and see what you think. Because he does it all. He did it all the time before he passed, of course. But so it does say person or persons. But the thing I got to remember to do is I'm not sharing little details with this person and then leaving my deepest, darkest secrets out of the equation. I can't
That's
do
right.
that. All right. And then it says to whom we take this intimate and confidential step. This is confidential in nature, right? I got to make sure I'm choosing the right person to do this with. For me, that was a sponsor. Someone I can have access to, confide in. Someone I can trust. That's not going to share my stuff with someone else. That's who I do it with. And then it talks about, those who belong to religious domination who has confessions. We're talking about probably the Catholic religion who does that. If you need to do that, go do that. For me, I needed to have someone they had an understanding of the 12 steps. And that's not to say that there aren't priests in AA or CA, because there are, but I need to have someone who understands the 12 steps and I'm trying to seek out, which is a relationship with power. And then the last paragraph, last part of that paragraph, the last sentence, or second to last sentence, we often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. So that kind of just reemphasizes for me that I need to have someone that knows what the problem is and then what the solution is. And that would be someone in the fellowship for me. And it says, of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. So I'm real careful on who I would share that with. The only other thing I would say about that is if I'm listening to your 4th step and you are part of the mafia or were at one time or another, and you did something like there's people in trunks of cars somewhere, please don't share that with me. I don't want to know that kind of stuff, because I don't want your mafia people coming after me, because I know your deepest, darkest secret now. Go share that with a priest. Go share that with your lawyer. Those are the people you go share that kind of stuff with. But and also at the same time, if you go share something with me that's very confidential, some kind of crime that you committed that I could get subpoenaed and have to go to court, when I sit on the stand, I will not lie on your behalf. I have to be honest, because that's the program that I'm trying to work today. So that's all I got there.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I think David did a really nice job of breaking this down. And as always, I just want to make sure we're really looking at the language being used here to make sure we understand it and how I think Bill is trying to communicate something. So just, right off the top, we must be entirely honest with somebody. So there's that must, and David, already badgered us about that. But why? Well, we must if we expect to live long or happily in this world. So twist that around, right? So if I don't expect to live long or happily, if I want to flame out and die miserable soon, I guess I don't have to be entirely honest. Just about every week we bring up, there's really two principles when you really distill it down, and they're introduced in the 4th step, right under the little chart. But it's really it's a microcosm of how I can evaluate, am I doing recovery the right way, quote unquote right way? Am I being thorough, and am I being honest? Right? Because if I'm doing those two things, if I'm thorough, that means I'm including everything, and I'm honest, I'm omitting nothing, and I'm telling the truth, I'm going to work through all the steps, the mechanics of them, and then grow spiritually based on those 2 pillars. But so this says we must be entirely honest. That's a little phrase where it's jamming thorough and honest right into one little 2-word phrase, which is great. And again, so that's an even better microcosm. How do I know, am I doing this right? Well, are you being entirely honest? Yes, I am. Okay, doing it right. And it was so great when we had Paige here in alternating weeks where David and I weren't here, and she had a slightly different worksheet that she used. And it's so beautiful. Paige has got a worksheet that she uses with some of with her sponsees, and David and I have a different worksheet that we use. And our buddy Terry, he's got a different one. He doesn't even use a worksheet; he does it straight from the book and a piece of paper. I celebrate. I'm sure Howard's got a slightly different one too. I celebrate it all. Because no matter what, no matter the tool, it's a different shovel. We're all digging the same hole, right? That's what matters. Am I being thorough and honest? It's so important in that opening sentence there. And I do expect to live long or happily in this world. That is one of the promises that is given to me, that I can have a great life and find contentedness and not be depressed and miserable anymore. All right. And so, again, I don't want to beat up too much of the stuff that I think David did a nice job of talking about, but, let's choose the right person. And this stuff about, if we belong to a religion, we must. This comes down to this whole concept that's brought up a few times in the book. Look, some of us have religious or spiritual convictions when we come into recovery. Some of us don't, but some of us do. But if I do, if religion is important to me and I respect it, but I never got the vital spiritual experience out of it, then bless me to stay involved with it and to merge that organized religion with 12-step recovery, right? There is no opposition. They all go hand in hand. And so this is saying, if I'm really trying to honor that faith as I work through my 12-step recovery, and if there's a must, I need to follow the must. right? As I understand the principles of most organized religions, it's not a take what you want and leave the rest any more than 12-step recovery is. It's based on being thorough and honest and being a service, right? And when you really boil religions down. And then, I just want to underscore again what David said too. If I got 100 things I need to cover with my sponsor, and there's 2 I just can't because I'm so embarrassed and so humiliated, that's okay. That's okay. Go tell it to a priest. Go tell it to someone that's safe that can keep your confidence. And then just go back and tell your sponsor, hey, you know what? There was a couple of things couldn't share with you, but I shared them with this priest. I got it out. I shared it with another person. I shared it with God. That's okay. Let's celebrate that too. Just get it out. Be rid of it. Give it away.
Yeah, I like one other thing. I listened to Chris
Please.
Raymer one time. Chris Raymer said he's sitting down listening to one of his sponsors 4-step, and Chris is on the guy's 4-step, and he is just like ripping Chris a big one. He's like, Chris goes, "That's enough.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to harm the other person here, dude. It's like, knock it off." It's like, I'm not going to listen to this. It's like, I just thought that was hilarious. It's
Yeah,
like,
totally.
I mean, I think most of my sponsees like me, but I'm not so certain that they all like me. But the fact is like, we're in the saving life business, not the result business. But we get to carry this message, and people whose lives get changed and they get saved. And this is not a feeling program. I found that out very early in sobriety when I was going to get locked up for the crimes I committed prior to my sobriety. I was going to meetings at the same time. I was going to court, waiting for my sentencing. I knew I was going to go to jail for a while, and I would go to meetings and complain about it and talk about it. And one lady that had like 25 years told me right in the middle of my share in front of a large group of AA meetings, she goes, "David, shut up. I can't listen to you whine and complain about you going to jail. Do us a favor. Your family's going to be fine. They were fine before you got sober. They'll be fine after you get sober. Go to jail, but please come back to us." And that's what I followed, those directions. And she's a good friend of mine today still. And she has plenty of sobriety. So got to know the truth here.
Continuing on. Sorry. One last thing too. David said everything around this, except I think pointed this out. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. And so David mentioned our problem and our solution. Ultimately, what's the problem? What's the dilemma? Lack of power, right? Overflowing with self because of it. That's our problem. Liquor's but a symptom. Cocaine, but a symptom. Okay, so first full paragraph on 74. If we cannot or would not rather do this, we search our acquaintance for a closed-mouthed, understanding friend. Perhaps our doctor or psychologist will be the person. It may be one of our own family. We're going to have some definite thoughts about this paragraph. Okay. It may be one of our family, but we cannot disclose anything to our wives or our parents which will hurt them and make them unhappy. Or our sponsors, like David was just talking about, right? Mm-hmm. We have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand, yet be unaffected. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. So do you have anything here, Abby? No? Okay, let me just start us off here. A couple things, David. Please. So as happens many times in the book, guys, Bill started writing this in 1937, published in 1939. There was in the neighborhood of 100 recovered people in AA, right? As David and I we did a Zoom doctor's opinion study Sunday afternoon out of the UK. There was like 112 people in one meeting, right? So think about this. In 1939, when this book came out, 100 recovering, probably not even all recovered, 75% rape, whatever, 100 people doing AA. Now there was 112 people in just one meeting at 2:00 our time on a Sunday afternoon. At that time, there was probably, with all the meetings in the world, 10,000, 50,000 people in a meeting at that time. And the reason why I point this out is things were very different in 1939 when there was only 100 people. Bill had just written this, which is incredible. 4 years sober. Could any of you imagine? I've been sober over 20 years. David coming on 25, right? Carol, could you imagine writing this book at 4 years sober? I didn't know my butt from a hole in the ground. I still don't. But to actually write this is amazing. But they had so much to figure out. They hadn't figured out the traditions, right? They didn't know how to run groups. They hadn't figured out the concepts and the service structure. They hadn't figured out anything, right? They had figured out the 12 steps, borrowed right from those 6 tenets from the Oxford group, and they were learning as they went. They were very much, we use this in business a lot, in my business, we're building the plane as we're flying through the air, right? And so a couple of times in the book, Bill talks about, well, if you have difficulty doing this or finding the right person, and guys, I know it's in the book. It's very different today. It's very different today. There's 34 of us in the meeting right now. This is just one small meeting study that's going on. There's plenty of people out there working a program recovery in whatever your core fellowship is. There's no need to go to a doctor or a psychologist. This is my belief system. I got to be able to find somebody in recovery. Again, doesn't go against what I said a few minutes ago. If I got a couple of 2, 3 things that I can't take to a sponsor or anybody else in recovery, that's okay. Take it to somebody else, right? But I don't need to go looking very far. And the reason why I make a big deal about this is because if I'm unable to find someone in recovery, it's probably because, not that I'm unable, it's not that I cannot, it's probably more of a will not. It's that I'm probably full of fear, right? I must let go of all my old thinking. I was talking to a newcomer recently, and they're like, yeah, I just know how I handle these things. I know how I go about, and I'm like, dude, everything you know, throw that stuff away. Unlearn everything that you've learned about how you think you need to approach life, right? Which is what I had to do. So I don't really counsel people to go looking far and wide and wander in the desert. There's plenty of us here, right? Who can listen to Fifth Steps. And maybe one of our own family. David's got some stories about this, so I won't steal it from him. For the love of God, don't do that. I know it's in the book. Far be it from me to conflict with the book. That's like the worst thing to do in my experience, is to go and find somebody in my family to read a Fifth Step to, right? And then this last part, David was just talking about in that story from Raymer, right? I don't go into my Fifth Step either to badger the person who's listening with all the resentments I have. Listen, if you want to get it out, hey man, because I did listen to a sponsee one time. He just said one thing, hey, I was kind of resentful about this one thing. And it's like, okay, man, I heard it. That's different from being like, and giving me my whole inventory back. That's a very different situation, right? And I can't also share anything that can go on to hurt them sort of collaterally. I can't, if the person hearing my Fifth Step, I ought not be sharing things with them that maybe happened to them from a third party. I have to take care not to harm the person hearing. Okay? I got to be hard on me, absolutely, but considerate of the other people. Remember, I'm starting a life of service. This is the entire way that I've got to live going forward, right? Constant thought of others and how I can meet their needs. Meeting people's needs begins with not harming them, right? So I start by not harming, then I can figure out how to be of help.
Yeah, I starts out that paragraph. If we cannot or would rather not do this, we search our acquaintance for a close-mouthed understanding friend. So yeah, I don't need someone to rubber stamp my stuff, right? I need someone to take a hard, honest look at my fourth column. So I'm looking for someone really to understands the common peril, understands what the problem is, understands the solution, and that would probably be for me. And another thing I would think about doing here is, remember David just said, lack of power is our dilemma. That's on page 45, and it says we had to find power by which we could live, which kind of tells us up on the top of that paragraph on 74, if we expect to live long or happily in this world, kind of works together with we need lack of power is our dilemma. We need power. And then it says, so let me read page 45, just that one short paragraph. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power, capital letters, meaning God, greater than ourselves, obviously, but where and how we find this power. And then it goes on to tell us this in this book. So, in establishing a relationship with God. So, if in one I'm powerless, the opposite of powerless must mean power. that means that I should start inviting God in right away. And that's something that I start with my sponsor. He's right. Invite him in all day, him or her, they, whatever your God of your no understanding is, but start inviting them in. Do it in this situation too. Invite them in. And I think, for me, like I even had an issue on Tuesday, and I immediately texted David in the morning. I know my sponsor is not available, but I have running buddies in this program. So people that I give spiritual consent to, and David's one of them. I don't give it to everybody. Like I share honestly from my heart and my soul with things that are going on. And so I had the time, he took the call and we discussed things probably about half hour, 45 minutes, and it needed to be done. But he's a closed mouth friend. I know it doesn't go any farther than that. And without any judgment, but he also can tell me the truth and I'll get to debate it. I just get to consider it. And that wasn't necessarily the case this time, but I need some counseling, and counseling comes from, for me anyways, from people who has experience with the 12 steps. I can get plenty of opinions from family members. I just go right downstairs right now and I'll ask for someone's opinion and I'll get a bunch. I'm not naming any names just because I'm married to her. I'm just saying, if I want her opinion, I just can go get one. It's free of charge too, by the way. But then it says here, next sentence, perhaps our doctor or psychologist will be the person. Oh, wait a second, though. Bill's just contradicted himself a little bit. Let's go back to page 73. In the third paragraph, it says psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. In other words, we didn't tell the whole truth. We are seldom told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. So Bill's kind of saying, don't go that route because we're not really truthful with them people. It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm working in the gray area, but I'm just saying, I just read that, so it was fresh in my mind. I thought, oh, that ties together kind of nicely, or not so nicely. So then it says, it may be one of our own family. I changed the word family to fellowship. I'm not going to my family with this. I had a good friend of mine who allowed a sponsee of his go to his wife. You imagine how that showed up. Yeah, he never stayed sober. He got divorced, lost his business, and he is dead, like really dead now. Drink himself to death. That is not going to go well. I don't have the right to harm others, as David pointed out many, many times. My right to do that. I've done that my entire life prior to sobriety. And even when I wasn't drinking and drugging, I harmed people. So now that I'm living a life of through this practicing the 12 steps and practicing these principles on my affairs, I don't have the right to do that. So then it says we have no right to save our own skin. So at another person's expense. Why? Because I'm trying to get free of selfishness. That's what I'm trying to get free of. And if I'm going to do that, that's being really, really selfish to do that. So I'm trying to be free of that stuff here. And I don't have the power to do that. But if I am aware, awake, not sleeping, dreaming I'm awake, I won't go and take that path. Then it says such parts of our story will tell someone who will understand yet be unaffected. Again, if David was my sponsor, I know him well enough. And even if you're new and you don't know your sponsor well enough, here's my experience. And you don't get to debate this because it is my experience. My first sponsor, I didn't know him very long, but by 1 month sober, I had worked all 12 steps. By 2 weeks, I had already done my 4th step and done my 5th. How intimately did I know this guy? I didn't want to die, and I loathed myself who I became. I wanted to be this really good father, this really good husband, be a good provider, live in a nice neighborhood, white picket fence, 2 cars in a garage. That's what I wanted, and I couldn't do any of those things. Sober or not sober, I needed spiritual principles in my life. So this guy who took me under his wing, didn't know the book real well, but got me busy and got me to God quickly, was the first relationship. I mean this with all my heart. Even when I was 5 years old, I was lying for no reason whatsoever. I can give you instances that will bore you to death. There's no reason for me to do that. I'm just saying I lie for no reason. But this is the first guy I was ever completely honest with. And it saved my life that he just was so open to allowing me to share and share and share. And I did my whole 4th step, 5th step with him. And I had done that by the time I was 2 weeks sober. So I needed to get free of self. And he allowed me to do that. The last sentence there in that paragraph. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. Honest. with ourselves and honest with another. That's what I'm trying to do here. And yes, you use the word must because that is pertinent right there. And you use the word rule. I know a lot of times you say there's no rules in AA. Well, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's 10 rules, or no, I'm sorry, that's misstated. They use the word rule 10 times. That's why I'm not going to go to them in the book, because they're not relatable. They use it in that. I don't know how that is used in that sentence, but this rule, the rule here is that we must be hard on ourselves. But always consider of others.
Carrying on. Notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, it may be one is so situated that there is no suitable person available. If that is so, this step may be postponed. Only, however, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity. We say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person. It is important that he be able to keep a confidence, that he fully understand and approve what we are driving at, that he will not try to change our plan. But we must not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. Abby?
I do have notwithstanding and confidence. Notwithstanding meaning nevertheless or however. Confidence meaning reliance upon another person's secrecy or loyalty for a secret.
Thank you. I mean, kind of more of the same in this paragraph. I'll just say it's very hard for me to imagine one is so situated that there's no suitable person available, especially now. Not only do we have recovery everywhere, you know, some 12-step fellowships larger than others, certainly, right? AA and CA and NA and ones like this that are bigger, Al-Anon, more meetings, more availability. Guys, we have technology now. We have Zoom, right? We all have inexpensive laptops or cell phones or something. Maybe not every person on this planet, but we have means to access to people. And it is easy to find somebody of the right character and discipline and that meets these other qualifications that this paragraph is talking about online. And that's cool. I mean, I watch these videos of people that their job is to be in fire watchtowers. They've all got internet too, right? They can jump on a phone call. They can jump on a Zoom, right? Even if they don't have enough bandwidth for data to be on a Zoom. They didn't have Zooms back in the 1940s where the first guy was getting sober in California, where the first guy was getting sober in Idaho, the first gal was getting sober in Washington State. I'm certain they did a lot of phone conversation, right? And we can too. Don't delay. Find somebody. Don't use the language in the book to postpone. And I know that it's telling us right here, it's okay to postpone if we solemnly swear to follow up on it later. I don't know, guys. Like, I'm sure Howard talked about it last week. You hear David talk about it all the time after he got it from Howard. With a newcomer, we have a small window of opportunity. We don't know when it's going to slam shut. We got to help people get to God quickly. We just cannot wait. We got to rush this thing. Better to move a little fast. Get them into the work. Get them into the, writing that inventory and get them into those 9-step amends and then living in the disciplines of 10, 11, and 12. And then as we've hurried them through to help get them close to God, then we can start over at the beginning. Then we can go line by line, word by word out of the book. God bless, right? But let's get this initial round of the work done. Let's get to God.
Yeah, so as David said, well, let's look at the first sentence here because they have a must, notwithstanding great necessity. That is a must for discussing with someone, and maybe one who is so situated that there are no suitable persons available. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. That's not our excuse today. Baloney. But later in the paragraph, though, it says, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity, not the second, not the third. They don't give us other opportunities. It's the first opportunity. So if you're in the bush in Australia and you're working out by yourself, you can't get to someone and you have no Wi-Fi or internet, the first opportunity you get back to civilization, you make an appointment with your sponsor and you do this work. That's what I see it says. Bottom of the page, last sentence, which is a bit of a run on. It is important that we are able to keep a confidence that he fully understand and approve and approve what we are driving at. That he will not try to change our plan. So I make my appointment. Hopefully, he is armed with the facts about himself, about the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever fellowship that you're in. But then it says we must, and here's another must, not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. This is a spiritual experience, not a therapeutic one. This is really important that I do this. Very important that I do this because it is spiritual, period, the end, not therapeutic. I'm not learning coping skills, how to deal with my problems as I did in therapy, which is a good thing. Go to therapy, please, so you can learn coping skills. But it's not going to work with alcoholism. It's just not going to work coping skills. I tried it. Please don't try that if you're new. So I'm just saying, spiritual exercise, not a therapeutic one. And picking someone, again, you throw a rock and hit a sponsor. Hopefully you get to enough meetings, find someone that, again, is armed with the facts about themselves. And they didn't even have the title sponsor back then. So, we do today. And if you don't like the word sponsor, change it to spiritual, what do we say? Guide.
Step guide, spiritual guide.
Yeah, whatever. So that's all I got there.
Okay. Top of 75. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. So that's a time reference there. We have a written inventory and we are prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. He should realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand. Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence. Abby, nothing? Okay. Why don't you start us off this time, David?
Okay, so I take this sentence here and I'm going to personalize it, put it in first person here. And the first word there says when we decide. So I put down there because I'm inviting God in. So where it says when we decide, I put God and I decide who's to hear our story. We waste no time. And as David said, this is a time frame, between, I probably should have made this up between third step and fourth step. That's when my time frame should be. I mean, really, I tell my sponsees, it's like, you got 2 weeks, you got a week, whatever it is. And I give them a countdown. Like, we're not messing around with this. I respect my time because I respect yours. Let's get busy and do this work. And then it says we have a written inventory. I changed that word up. It means the same thing, list. And then I, instead of we, are prepared for, and underlying the word long talk. So I should have a long list. Again, one thing though that I want to point out, this is not a biography. That's not something, and we give our drunkalogue in treatment, about how we drank it. That's not what this was. That's not what this is. No, this is not that. This is a long talk about, because I'm well aware of what column 1 and column 2 look like. That's where I've lived my entire life. And I touched on column 3 a little bit, but I need to know the truth in 4. So next sentence here, change the word we to I to personalize it. I explain to our partner that we are about to do and why we have to do it. Have to do it is a must. Why? Because I need to get free of the bondage itself. I need to have access to power. I know what's blocking me. Calamity and pomp. My ego is showing up. I'm going to drink again on my own power. He should realize that we are engaged upon a life or death errand. I guess I should have read on because that's exactly what I just said, but Bill said it even better. Engaged on a life or death errand. Life or death. That is a death threat. That is a warning. I'm going to die. Most people approaching this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by their confidence. This is my experience every single time I sit down with a sponsee and I listen to on their 5th step. Every single time. I am honored to do that. And I'm going to tell you one other thing. I've listened to hundreds of 4th steps over my time. And I honestly don't ever remember after the meeting's over with, I left. I forget everything that he probably or she shared for the most part. Until we're in a conversation, just a random conversation somewhere. He goes, hey, you remember when you told me about this, how my behavior was dishonest or inconsiderate in my 4th step? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that, dude, but refresh my memory. And he goes on, I go, oh, absolutely. That's you to a T, and I treated alcoholism. But the bottom line here is like, no, I don't take that home with me necessarily and give it a lot of concern, because what I have done prior to me sitting down at the fifth step, I've said a prayer. I've invited God in to be with me and the sponsee so that I can have an open ear, I have God's ears, and then they can be honest and thorough from their insides out. That's about all I got there.
Okay. I think so I guess, the first thing I would ask David is, how quickly is wasting no time, right? Like, what's the immediacy? Pretty immediate, I would guess, right? So I make my decision, who I'm going to tell this to. And again, shouldn't be much of a decision. Today, I'd go to my sponsor, and then I waste no time. I got my writing I've already done, my written inventory, and I'm going to be prepared for a long talk. And I have always, for lack of a better word, I've always indulged my sponsees to let them get everything out. And man, it is a marathon sometimes. It's often more than one day, often more than 2, 3, depending on our work schedules and stuff. But it's hours and hours and hours. I let them get every bit of it out, because that's what my first sponsor did for me. And I was so grateful because I knew the content of those inventories so well. So I carried them with me my whole life. And it felt, David says not therapeutic, but it was sort of a cathartic experience. You just just vomit it all out, get it all out. Because once it was out, once I had shared it with God and my sponsor, it was like I didn't own it anymore. So I give that same opportunity to everybody that I'm here in their fifth step, like, get it all out. But the offset is, because you're giving it over, then we're going to be moving into 6 and 7. And a whole lot of 6 and 7 is having some awareness about how awful all the stuff was that we just went through in 5. Really, that's 6. And then in 7, what am I going to do to not be that guy anymore? So get it all out, because we're going to leave it in the past where it belongs. We're not going to forget about it, but it's in the past. It's not in our present, and it's not in our future. That's the trade-off. As much time is needed to get to that point. All right. And then, should realize it's gates upon the life and death of Aaron. David got whipped up when he started saying that. Hopefully by this point, and it shouldn't be that far in, that I haven't forgotten as a newcomer, and I still haven't forgotten as an old timer, that this is a life and death illness, right? This thing kills. And so this inventory process, and then the unloading of it to God and another person, is very much a part of this life-saving journey. I can't save anybody's life. I cannot produce the results, but I can help limp them, carry them along till they get to God, right? To get their lives saved, getting that infusion of power. Okay, continuing 75. Here's a beautiful part. It's going to tell us exactly how we go about doing our fifth step, and then we're going to pause, and then we'll get into the rest of the paragraph. So here's the great answer. Somebody says, okay, how do I do this fifth step now? Well, we pocket our pride and we go to it. Pocket our pride and go to it. Illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. That's the direction. Pocket my pride. That means I put away any of my concerns about what my sponsor or the person hearing my fifth step is going to think. Put aside my fears about how they're going to judge me. Put aside my concerns about what are they going to think of my image, my identity. Am I going to feel embarrassed? Am I going to feel humiliated? I put all that in my pocket. It means I bury it down out of the way. And then I go to it. Again, when I decide who's to hear our stories, I waste no time. So I pocket my pride and I go to it immediately. No pausing, no procrastination. And as I'm in it, I illuminate, so I cast light on every twist of character, right? So how I behaved, how I acted out in all of my character defects, every dark cranny of the past, all those scary, ugly, humiliating actions, thoughts, deeds, words. that I carried out, that I spewed out. It's okay. The fifth step should be a safe place for sharing all these things. This is a judgment-free zone. I've heard a lot of stuff too in fifth steps that I've heard, and I've heard some really awful things. But on the whole, even if some of those awful things maybe I hadn't done, I certainly thought about doing them. It would be very hard for any of us as alcoholics and addicts, I think, to be shocked by the kinds of things we hear in fifth step. I think we take it in because we have done a lot of questionable things ourselves. And even if we didn't do it, like I said, speaking for myself, I've thought about it. I didn't leave too many stones unturned in my imagination. Why don't you jump in on that, and then we'll get into the promises.
Okay. So it says, we pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character. So illuminating means to shine a light on. So what are we talking about there? So, and then it says every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. We go, hold your page there, go back to page 55 in the fourth paragraph, if you would. Wait for you guys to get there. It says, fourth paragraph, we can only clear the ground a bit if our testimony sweeps away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourage you to search diligently within yourself. Then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of our belief is sure to come to you. That is searching diligently. That's what I need to be done here. That is absolutely tied together. And then it talks about on page 63 in the first paragraph, because I have invited God in here, first paragraph, jump over to 63, hold your page on 75, because we're going to go back there, if you would, please. Halfway through the paragraph, and I'll wait till you get there, it says, as we felt new power flow in. So it says, as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear today, tomorrow, the hereafter. We were reborn. I should have no fear going into this thing. The promises came long before this promises we're going to read here. This book is full of promises. If I'm doing this, as David pointed out, honestly and thoroughly, I should be experiencing a lot of these things. And it's okay to go back and reference this. I do this a lot with my sponsees, especially brand new ones, maybe ones that I maybe just freshly started sponsoring, and then they have a few 24 hours and they needed to change sponsors, and it's me. I don't always do this, but I think that's really important. And then I think that's all we have. And then we're going to do the promises here. So perfect. Thank you.
So yeah, so as we both mentioned, the rest of this paragraph is the fifth step promises, right? Or certainly the sort of the longest list of fifth step promises. There's some other independent ones. So here is a promise. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we're delighted. So there's a little condition to that promise, as we see in other promises in the book. So that's the first promise. We can look the world in the eye. That's a promise. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. That's a promise. Our fears fall from us. That's a promise. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. That's a promise. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. That's a promise. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. That's a promise. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Big promise. Abby, anything in there, or I skipped over you at the beginning? Okay. Why don't you start us on this one too, David?
Yeah, I'm not going to add a lot because these are promises that I've experienced. I don't know how to add anything more to them, because these are what comes true for me if I've done this honestly and thoroughly. I mean, this is about complete freedom. This is about a conscious contact with power in my life. And once I experience this, and as a sponsor sitting across the room, I experience these things too at the same time, because I'm giving up my time because I want to do this. I want to see other people get well and carry this message. So I don't know. I don't know how to add anything better to,
Mm,
or even add. I can't add anything to it. They're just
mm.
phenomenal promises.
Well, I'll talk about them a little bit, and I'll leave the door open
Okay.
for you to jump back in on them. So let's talk about some of these. So once we've taken this step, right? Once I pocketed my pride and went to it, illuminating every twisted character, every dark cranny of the past. Once I've done that, withholding nothing, which means if there was a couple things I couldn't talk to my sponsor about, took it to somebody else. I was thorough, entirely honest. We are delighted. You know why I was delighted? And I could tell the psychic change was really happening for me. My spiritual experience, my spiritual awakening was really growing. Because when I wrote that fourth column in the fourth step, and I was like, holy cow, this is me. I am so consumed with self, so much selfishness, so much self-seeking. And then I got in that, and it was so embarrassing and humiliating. I had so much fear around it that when I got through the fifth step, I had this great sense of relief, which is just the beginning, which I learned was really how it was growing in freedom, right? Relief is what I want. Like I just want to be rid of this. But that's almost selfishly motivated as well. I need to be not relieved from personal gain. I need to be relieved of self. That's the relief. I need to be on the road of freedom, of pure freedom, right? David says it all the time. Got it from Mark Houston. How free do I want to be? Do I want to be completely free? Or do I still want to have a shackle on my leg that's on a 20-foot chain? No, no, no. I want to be completely free, not somewhat free, not occasionally free, not partially free, completely free. So I was delighted because it was like, man, I got through this activity, this exercise that I never could have imagined getting through. We can look the world in the eye. No more secrets. What does this talk about? Look, so it's obviously a phrase to look the world in the eye, but it's grounded in, you guys were like me, I'm sure, dishonest, devious, manipulative, right? Self-serving. And maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you guys were more sociopathic or psychopathic than I was. I had a lot of trouble looking people in the eyes back in the day because I was always up to someone. I just was always shifty. I'm not a good liar today. So sometimes, like if I'm being bratty with my wife or something, I still get shifty and she laughs and she calls me out on it immediately, right? Because I can't look her in the eye, even I'm just being playful, being like, antagonizing her. But that's how I couldn't keep eye contact with anybody because I was always up to something, right? So now it's all out there. I gave it to my sponsor. I gave it to God. I can look all of you guys in the eye. I can look at God. I shouldn't say I can look God in the eye. It doesn't really make sense. I can look at the world, right? Which is really what it says. I can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Again, if I'm not hiding, if I'm not scheming, if I'm not planning, I can like exhale, right? And actually be at perfect peace and ease because I'm not trying to remember the lie. I'm not worried about talking in code on the phone. I'm not trying to figure out, right, how to switch, manipulate, and manage all the people in my life, all the relationships that are crumbling around me. Or fears fall from us. Getting through a thorough and honest fourth and fifth step is incredibly empowering. I conquered fear with faith through this process. That's why the fears were falling from me. Began to feel the nearness of our Creator. I'm not sure I realized it was the nearness of the Creator at the time, but I knew I felt more whole. Something was with me. I was getting some of that power, I suppose, right? In retrospect. May have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we began to have a spiritual experience. I'm not sure I had any spiritual beliefs, guys. But you bet your bippy I was starting to have a spiritual awakening, psychic change. There's no question. To go through the thorough and honest, I know I'm repeating myself. It's because it's so powerful to me. To go through the thorough and honest fourth and fifth, I never could have done that before in the 30 years prior. It was amazing that I could do it because I was turning everything over, right? I was following this God path. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly, definitely by this point. Now, listen, was I completely relieved of my obsession at this point to drink and drug? I think so. I think I was relieved of it. Was I still thinking about it more than, say, I do today? Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't obsessing. Remember, I had 30 years, or at least the last 15 or 20, drinking and drugging. So for me to all of a sudden just cut it off, whether I did it or whether God did it, it was still unnatural for me. Right. But I felt very convinced that my drinking and drugging problem had disappeared. It was strong. I had so much faith that was reinforced by this process. And then felt that I was on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. It's a very beautiful way that Bill's describing that. I don't think I would have had the words to describe it that way. But as I said, I felt, I don't know, I was feeling safe and protected by this point. I was feeling a oneness, a wholeness that I'd never felt before. That was coming from God. That was coming from the fellowship too. That was coming from you guys. You know, the fifth step is ultimately one of the great ways to be in all three of our legacies at the same time. You know, to be in service, to be in unity, and to be practicing recovery.
I can add a little something.
I'm sure you can.
You've sparked one of my two brain cells, and I think they're both bouncing off each other. So there's something going on here. So again, like David said, we are delighted, and it's like this is like the first time I've done anything honest in my entire life.
Exactly.
And I actually started something and finished it, and I actually followed. Listen to this directions. I followed directions, not only from my sponsor, but out of the big book to the best ability that I had. And where did I get that ability from? Didn't come from me. It came from, I know this now. I didn't know that then, but it came from a power greater than myself because I don't have the ability to do these steps. If I came in the rooms, you told me to do a 4-step the first night and I didn't explain to you the first 3, you're not going to have the ability to do that. God will give you the ability each and every step. As each step poses a question, the next step answers it. And I get the ability to work the next step. And then it says, we can look the world in the eye. And like David said, it's like, we've both been in our adult lives have been salespeople for most of our adult lives. And I was not a very honest salesperson. I just wasn't. And today I can look the world in the eye. And I it just blows me away when I have these out of body experiences. And maybe you've had this and maybe you haven't, either with a spouse, a friend, a neighbor, someone at work, a customer. And I'm having this conversation and these wonderful words are coming out of my mouth, or I'm listening intently to the conversation, and not a story stealer, by the way, because they're sharing about their boat and they want to tell me how great it is. And I just happen to have a bigger boat. That's a story stealer who does something like that. I don't do that, but I'm having this out of body experience here and I'm looking the guy in the eye the whole time because I'm intently actually interested in what's going on with the guy or the gal I'm talking to. That is change. And then it says we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. That is something that I could never do. Why? In the bottom of page 28 in Roman numeral 28, I'm irritable, restless, and discontented. That's why. That's why I need to have a spiritual awakening so that I can have alone at perfect peace and ease. And then our fears fall from us. Well, if we hang on to that page, go back to page 67 in the third paragraph, if you'd like to follow along, because we've got to bounce a little bit from time to time. Last paragraph on 67 and how it works. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer and his wife. Wait for it. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it and set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did we not ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classified with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. This is a conscious decision at this point. I know that stealing is a conscious decision. I believe fear is too. If I'm not inviting God in, if I'm not sharing with my sponsor, if I'm not practicing these principles, all my fear will show up. But I don't live that way anymore. And this is the first experience with being free of fear. And then I won't say a lot about this. We may have certain spiritual beliefs. Whatever I had to let go of some of my old ideas. That's all. And the second step came to believe power greater myself. Let go of some of those ideas. I'm not saying they're bad. I just need some new ideas. That's all. And feeling the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. When I was 3 months sober, the obsession was removed from me. I just know it was. I called somebody because I wanted to take a drink that day, and I didn't drink. And I went, oh my God, I'm not alone anymore. Anyone go to a meeting, in-person meeting, they have that sign on the wall that says you're not alone anymore. I never knew what that meant until I knew what that meant. Now I know what that means. I do, because the first step says we, and I know what that means today. It says we feel we are on the broad highway, capital letters, walking hand in hand with capital letters, the spirit of the meaningful. Aren't these wonderful promises? If you haven't done this work yet, these will become for you as they have as well came for all of us.
All right, so we'll just stop a couple minutes early because this is a perfect place. We
Yeah.
can't get into that next paragraph in 2-3 minutes. Okay, so stand by.